All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope the others also can hear.
All right. So the title of the presentation is an Islamic vision of entrepreneurship, which is developed through a multi-layer comparative analysis, and I'm going to show how I have gone through this paper. So right now, what's happening that the Silicon Valley style entrepreneurship has penetrated the Muslim world as a number of tech-based startups backed by venture funds are now operational in many Muslim countries. The academia and religious scholarship in the Muslim world also appears to be comfortable with such development and consider it beneficial for the economy as long as the products or services or ways of financing are Sharia compliant. However, the concerned academia and scholarship in the Muslim world seems to be oblivious of the historicity and cultural
Brother
specificity.
Omar, can you raise your voice a little bit?
All right, I'll try to.
Yeah, appreciate.
However, however, the concerned academia and scholarship in the Muslim world seems to be oblivious of the historicity and cultural specificity of the startup economy. The political economy perspective also appears to be absent from the vintage point of the concerned scholars. The result is acceptance of Silicon Valley style model of tech-based entrepreneurship without enough critical evaluation. Such acceptance is not even seen anymore in the Western intellectuals who now see the startup economy as a potential threat to human psyche, social relations, economy, and politics. So, this paper therefore takes a step into the direction of critically evaluating the tech based entrepreneurship model spreading throughout the world, including the Muslim world as well. This critical evaluation is done through evaluating the model in context of its historicity and synchronicity with the political economy of modern Western capitalist world. Hollingsworth's perspective of institutional analysis is used to explore the foundation of tech-based entrepreneurship model to its ideological core and reconstruct an alternative model based on Islam's ideological core. This will allow the concerned scholarship and religiously inspired youth to see where the model stands in contrast to Islamic ideals and the ideals of modern capitalist society. The paper also then highlights the alternative model of entrepreneurship grounded on the ideological foundation of Quran and Sunnah. The key feature of the paper in this contrast, which it attempts to develop between the modern tech-based and Islamic alternative entrepreneurship. It is argued that without such a contrast, it is not always possible to truly appreciate or critically evaluate any particular model. The contrast, therefore, helps in highlighting and distinctly articulating the key features or benefits of any model under critical evaluation. Hollingsworth's method is, in this context, provide a way to dig down to the core ideas at the foundation of a system. The Hollingsworth method suggests that a system is built on several layers and peeling of one layer reveals the next layer. This can be done by asking questions regarding why something is happening on a particular layer and subsequent exploration leads to the next layer. This is done until the explorer reaches to the core, which comprise of a set of assumptions, beliefs, values, ideals on which the system or institutional design is built upon. After identifying the core where the root cause of the systemic problem exists, we can replace the core with an alternative core and reconstruct an alternative system upon the new core, which comprises of an alternative set of ideas. So if we look at tech startup economy at the surface, we see lots of companies on their way of becoming multi-million dollar firms, and some of them even reaching billions of dollars in their financial valuation. Typically, the financial valuation of these startups is based on the data they are able to accumulate. More data a company is able to gather in short period of time means the more financial valuation it can achieve. Likewise, even if the company is not making money in real terms. The founders of such tech companies become billionaires in short period of time just because the stake which they own in their companies is valued in billions due to the data which they have been able to gather in a short period of time. This is done in multiple rounds or series of investments where every next round of investment bails out the previous investor, while in the final round, the general public is invited to invest in the shares which eventually bail out the last institutional investors or investor. This tech-driven startup culture has successfully introduced a new form of asset known as data, which is logically and ideologically identical to the financial capital, which also exists in the form of, which also exists in digital form. Both entities, that is the data and financial capital, behave and grow in a very similar manner. And because of this compatibility, it can be said that financial capital, which already existed in digital form, has now found its most natural ally. The data also had an institutional ally, that is the bureaucratic system, which is not just employed by the state institutions, but also by the corporate world. Bureaucratic system of management is rational, thus it is data-driven. Therefore, the system views the massive inputs of data through tech-based startup uh, revolution as a huge advantage. The institutional juggernaut, which already involved in managing the growth of capital, was already running a bureaucratic system of management and are now using the startup economy as an extension of their own control over the resources and the general public. The investment of financial capital comes with strings attached, and financial capital is meant to be multiplied. The multiplication of financial capital means expansion or upgrading of institutional order, which has been successfully involved in the growth of financial capital up till now. As a result, entrepreneurs end up aiding the contemporary institutional order via data gathering systems instead of creating something new and beneficial for the beneficial for the humanity at large, thanks to the strings attached with the investments they take from the prevailing system. At the very core, we find entrepreneurs in the startup economies to be motivated by the agenda of the corporate or state bureaucracies, capital accumulation being the primary goal, dataism as a manifestation of dominant epistemological position, and human beings are seen as source of data. So alternatively, if we try to replace it with what Islam has taught us, so we would eventually replace the motivation with this the motivation to achieve salvation on the day of judgment, a benefit the community and humanity is a priority. Quran and Sunnah will become the dominant epistemology, and human beings are seen as wise grand cannot commit to the vision of restructuring the society bureaucratic order. An ideal Muslim entrepreneur would consider his or he or she commits to a vision of creating a just society where well-being of every direct assured, where one's own financial security and sustainability of one's entrepreneur and an ideal Muslim entrepreneur would want to fix problems to the root instead of creating temporary solutions only to cure symptoms, solutions for the symptoms of quick fixes and keep them.
I think there is a problem of connection.
I think I got disconnected.
Yes.
I'm going to share something again.
We can see you. Can you
All right.
also start sharing? Yes. Okay.
Again.
Okay.
So I'm going to repeat what I said here. An ideal Muslim would want to fix problems to the root instead of creating temporary solutions only to cure symptoms. And if problems are addressed with temporary fixes, they often create more problems which are addressed with more temporary fixes, so on and so forth. This approach often keep increasing in complexity of society as things are constantly added while the habits or patterns or methods which does not work are not removed. For example, why we should slow down our lives and instead add fast food and fast dating culture. And when fast food and fast dating culture create problems, why fix that instead? We should rather go some doctor or a therapist. So for a Muslim entrepreneur, labor is not a human resource, money is not the end goal, while the nature is not something to be brutally exploited, and the customer is not like someone to be emotionally manipulated into buying products. Labor or employees are rather like a family. Money is just a medium of exchange or store or measure of value, while as a Muslim, the entrepreneur considers himself or herself as a steward of nature, and customers are like brothers and sisters choosing for whom is like choosing for oneself. This design is totally opposite of the approach taken by modern entrepreneurs in general, though there are a few exceptions. The whole idea here is to strive to create a win-win atmosphere for all stakeholders in context of Maqasid Sharia while ensuring Sharia compliance on an operational level. The stakeholders include the labor, customers, suppliers, investors, and the general public, the society, and the natural environment. So, an ideal Muslim entrepreneur would see himself or herself in harmony with the cycle of production and consumption necessary to meet the needs of society instead of making attempts to dominate, control, and exploit every stakeholder with lesser bargaining power for his or her own self-interest or the interest of the investor. This table gives a point-by-point comparison between the vision, values, motivation, and approach of an ideal Muslim entrepreneur in contrast to the typical tech entrepreneur of the Silicon Valley.
Brother Omar, you have last 1 minute, please.
Yeah, this is the last slide.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Analysis is not exhaustive, rather a demonstration of a method through which the concerned scholars may understand and compare the modern alternatives with an Islamic one. Such analysis is behind the contemporary approach of uncritically accepting any institutional design while ignoring its historicity and political significance is perhaps not advisable when in essence a major difference can be seen after comparing the two designs through all layers of their existence. Once we can see the Islamic alternatives in such a contrast, we can be in a better position perhaps to decide when to accept or to reject a design of foreign origins. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Brother Omar, for this interesting presentation. We will be collecting the questions about this new